So, lads, the Fever are officially in the playoffs right now. After a crazy season,
Playoff, Dub!
That's how we clinch, baby!
We can't, W! Playoffs! Bow! Yeah! Playoffs, baby!
The Indiana Fever just punched their playoff ticket, but did they really? It's supposed to be a moment of celebration, a defining achievement for the team. A playoff berth doesn't happen every day for the Fever, so this should have been their time to shine. But instead of fireworks, fans were greeted with silence. And it wasn't just any silence, it was the kind of emptiness that makes you question if the moment even counts. The game was a blowout, 94-65, a clear victory. But the arena, half empty. The energy. You'd expect a playoff clinch to bring a packed house, fans screaming, the atmosphere electric. But instead, the place looked like a practice session on a Tuesday afternoon. The commentators tried to sell it as a sellout, but when the camera panned to the stands, the empty rows were undeniable. It was a strange moment. The Fever secured the win, but the celebration felt more like a formality than a genuine triumph. And the real kicker, Caitlin Clark wasn't there. Her absence turned what should have been a triumphant playoff moment into a hollow shell. It's no secret that the Fever's star power is what drove fans to buy tickets and tune into games. Without her, this playoff clinch felt more like an afterthought. While the Fever cruised to their playoff spot, it's important to acknowledge just how lifeless the Washington Mystics were in this matchup.
playoffs. If you would have said Caitlin Clark plays 13 games and she is healthy for none of them. Caitlin's injured the entire season. She plays 13 games at about 50%. If you had said Dawana Bonner quit on the team after 6 games. If you had said the Fever were going to get a hardship replacement for Caitlin, and then, if you were to say Fever were going to get a hardship replacement for Caitlin, and then her and Sid Coulson were going to get injured for the season in the same game, and then if you had said that like they were getting hardships, so if you were saying the both point guards, and they're not even hardships, like Ari McDonald is a hardship, Odyssey Sims is a hardship for a hardship, and then Shea Petty is what, 5th hardship.
What was supposed to be a competitive game turned into a one-sided affair, with the Mystics looking completely out of sync from the start. They entered the game already limping. This wasn't the same team that had shown promise earlier in the season. By the time the Fever had their foot on the gas, Washington seemed like they were already counting down the days until vacation. It wasn't just that the Mystics lost, they collapsed. They lacked urgency, fire, or even the energy to put up a fight. And while it's easy to point to the Fever's excellent play, it's hard to ignore how much the Mystics' struggle played into the outcome. Lifeless. That's the best way to describe their performance. Their game was more about survival than competition. On the other hand, the Fever came out with the kind of intensity that could only be described as playoff ready. Kelsey Mitchell might not have been hitting her shots consistently, but her aggression set the tone early. And then came Natasha Howard, Ariel Powers, and Aaliyah Boston, the true difference makers. Howard looked like a seasoned pro, punishing the Mystics inside with 17 points and 7 rebounds. Powers came off the bench with 15 points, keeping the energy up as the lead widened. Another classic, double-double, effortlessly pulling down 11 boards and adding 12 points to the tally. The Fever's depth was on full display. Players like Shaw Petty, Dirkika Dantas, and Citroen stepped up and chipped in, reminding everyone that this team has weapons beyond just their star players. And while the Mystics were clearly out of their depth, the Fever had no intention of letting up. They played hard, they played smart, and they delivered a win that was more than deserved, but still felt a little less special due to the lifeless atmosphere. Now, let's talk about the arena, because honestly, that's where the real story is. The Fever secured a massive playoff win, but the arena, it was as empty as the energy in the building. Sure, the announcers were quick to label it a sellout, but when you looked around, the truth was clear. Rows of empty seats, entire sections absent, and a noticeable lack of fans in the stands. It wasn't the scene you expect for a playoff clinching game. It's easy to blame the quiet atmosphere on a few empty seats, but it goes deeper than that. Fans bought tickets months ago, expecting Caitlin Clark to be back on the court for a thrilling playoff push. But when the Fever made the announcement that she was done for the season, those tickets quickly found their way to resale sites, or worse, just stayed unused. That's the cold reality here. Fans didn't show up, not because they didn't care about the Fever, but because the face of the franchise, Clark, wasn't there. Without her, the energy simply wasn't the same. Imagine this, you're hyped for a huge concert, expecting to see the headliner, and then you find out they're not coming. What do? You don't bother showing up. That's exactly what happened here. The Fever clinched the playoffs, but without Clark, the game felt more like a preseason warm-up than a momentous occasion. The silence in the arena spoke louder than any scoreboard ever could. The fans were missing, and so was the excitement. Now, let's dive into the real controversy: Caitlin Clark's absence. Fans were left wondering, was she really too injured to play, or did the Fever decide to shut her down for the long term? That uncertainty lingered in the air, creating frustration both within the team and among the fan base. The Fever kept sending mixed signals. Some reports hinted that Clark might return, but then, out of nowhere, it was announced that she was done for the season. This kind of uncertainty can breed resentment. Fans were looking forward to seeing their superstar lead the team into the playoffs, but instead, they were left with questions. Was she truly not ready to play, or did the organization make the call to protect their long-term investment? If she was 90% ready, should she have been out there getting playoff reps? Athletes don't always play at 100%, and some might argue that missing out on reps when you're on the brink of the postseason could be a costly move. Even Natasha Howard, one of the Fever's key players, seemed to think Clark might return. Her comment suggested that there was some confusion in the locker room as well. And if the players are confused, imagine how the fans feel. When the star of the show isn't even on the court, it's impossible not to wonder if the team is holding back for a bigger reason, or if they simply aren't being transparent about the situation. The confusion and lack of clear communication didn't just affect the players, it affected the fan experience too. With no definitive answers, resentment simmered beneath the surface, creating tension at a time when the team needed unity the most. Without Caitlin Clark, the Fever have found themselves in an uncomfortable position. They're technically in the playoffs, sure, but the shine has worn off. The excitement that comes with making the playoffs, especially for a team like the Fever, should be infectious, a moment that sparks pride and anticipation. But instead, the absence of their superstar has cast a shadow over the entire achievement. Let's face it, without Clark, the Fever just don't have the same pull. The energy isn't the same, and neither is the engagement from fans. When Clark was on the floor, every game felt like a must-watch. Tickets sold out, TV ratings soared, and the Fever became the talk of the WNBA. But now, without her, the fans are quiet, the arenas are empty, and the buzz just isn't there. Even if the Fever are putting up solid performances, it's clear that they're not drawing the same attention. People watch because they want to see Clark. And without her, the team is just another WNBA squad grinding through the season. The stark reality here is that the Fever, without Clark, look almost interchangeable with other teams. They're trying to stay relevant, but it's hard when the reason they were relevant in the first place is sidelined. The real kicker is that the team itself feels the shift. Sure, the players are stepping up, like Natasha Howard, Aaliyah Boston, and others, but it's clear that the true source of the team's momentum is missing. The bench is celebrating, the players are working hard, but the vibe is different. There's no electricity. It's hard to pretend that this playoff berth means the same thing without Clark on the court, and that's where fan engagement takes a hit. The Fever's true star power has been pulled away, leaving the team looking like it's just going through the motions. And fans, especially the casual ones, aren't sticking around for that. They want to see greatness, and without Clark, they're just not getting it. So yes, the Fever clinched their spot, but it's hard to ignore the fact that without Clark, they've become just another team, and that's a tough pill to swallow for a fan base that had so much hope for this season. The Fever's playoff clinch should have been a moment to rally around, a moment of pride. But when you peel back the layers, it's clear this achievement feels bittersweet, both for the team and the fans. The psychological weight of Caitlin Clark's absence is heavy, and it's impossible to ignore how that absence has shaped the entire narrative. For the players, this playoff spot feels like a mixed bag. On one hand, they've done their job. They played the schedule, secured the wins, and punched their ticket to the postseason. But beneath the surface, there's an undeniable sense of unfinished business. This was supposed to be Clark's moment to shine, to lead the team and show the world what the Fever were truly capable of. Instead, the players are left trying to celebrate without their star. You can see it in the celebrations, the smiles, the claps, the joy, but it all feels hollow. The cameras keep cutting to Clark in street clothes, signing autographs, and suddenly she becomes the focal point of the entire evening, even though she's not playing. It's a strange feeling when the clinching moment isn't about the game on the floor, but about the player off the floor. For the fans, the psychology is even more complex. There was anticipation, excitement, and hope for a season defined by Clark's star power. But when the reality hit, Clark wouldn't be there for the stretch run. The atmosphere shifted. The empty seats in the arena were a loud reminder of how fragile fan engagement can be. They weren't just missing a player, they were missing the energy, the excitement, the reason they bought tickets in the first place. The fans who did show up did their best to cheer, but they couldn't fake it. The energy just wasn't there, and the silence spoke louder than any cheers could. This playoff berth, instead of being a rallying cry for the Fever, has become a reminder of what the team could have been. It's about more than just the games. They're fighting against the shadow of Clark's absence. Every win, every celebration, every high five feels like a small victory against a backdrop of what's missing. The fans don't just want a playoff berth. They want the star that was supposed to lead them there. Without her, they're left questioning, is this team really playoff material? Or are they just hanging on by a thread until next season? So while the Fever clinched a spot in the postseason, it's hard to ignore that this moment feels more like a footnote in a bigger, more uncertain story. Without Caitlin Clark, the question remains, what's next for this team? Can they make noise in the playoffs? Or is this just a brief blip on the radar before next season? Fans and players alike know the answer. It's hard to get excited about a playoff run when you know your star isn't there to carry you through. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the bigger picture, because that's where the true implications of the Fever's playoff clinch come into focus. Yes, the team made it into the postseason, and that in itself is an achievement. But when you look at the situation through the lens of Caitlin Clark's absence, it's clear that this playoff berth comes with a massive asterisk. The Fever's success this season was built on the back of Clark's star power. She wasn't just the face of the franchise, she was the engine driving the excitement, the engagement, and the fan base. Without her, the team is just another squad grinding through the motions. Sure, Natasha Howard and Aaliyah Boston are playing well, and the supporting cast is stepping up, but it's hard to ignore that without Clark, the Fever lack the national attention, the media buzz, and, most importantly, the electricity that comes with having a superstar on the court. And that's where the bigger issue lies. The Fever clinched the playoffs, yes, but the moment feels hollow because the reason they were even relevant in the first place, Clark was sidelined. The question now is, what does this playoff spot really mean? Sure, it's an opportunity to compete, but without Clark, it's hard to envision them making a deep run. The ceiling for this team without her is a quick exit, and fans know it. The most concerning part is that the Fever's relevance, in the eyes of the league and their fans, is fragile. They're not a perennial powerhouse, they're a team relying on the star power of one player to carry them forward. And when that player isn't there, the team's identity falls apart. The empty arena, the low TV ratings, the lack of fan engagement, those are all reminders of how quickly momentum can be lost when your star isn't on the floor. So, while the Fever technically made it to the playoffs, the bigger picture is about the future. Can they remain relevant without Clark? Can they build a team capable of competing without relying on a single superstar? Or, more simply, can they regain the excitement and buzz that they had when Clark was there? Until those questions are answered, this playoff berth feels like a temporary solution to a much deeper problem. The Fever's true challenge starts now, and it's not about clinching a spot. It's about how they plan to stay relevant in a league where star power drives everything. So, what now? The Fever made it into the playoffs, but let's be real, without Caitlin Clark, the question marks pile up. The immediate aftermath of their playoff clinch isn't as celebratory as it should have been. Fans didn't show up, the arena felt empty, and the team's star wasn't even on the court. That's the reality the Fever now face, a playoff spot, but a massive hole where their star player used to be. The real story here isn't just about clinching a playoff berth. It's about what happens next for the Fever. What's their identity moving forward? And how will they prove their worth without Clark? There's no denying that, with her sidelined, they've lost their biggest asset. And with the playoffs on the horizon, their chances of making a significant impact are slim unless something changes. Without Clark, the Fever have to find a new way to build excitement, a new way to engage their fans. The question is, can they do it? The odds are stacked against them, but if they can pull together, develop more team chemistry, and keep their momentum, they might just surprise us. But the real focus should be on the future. This season is already tainted by what's missing. Looking ahead, the Fever need to figure out how to grow beyond the Clark-centric narrative. Can they develop a sustainable identity that doesn't depend on one player? Will they become a cohesive unit, with players like Howard, Powers, and Boston taking center stage? Or will they always be chasing Clark's shadow? There's still plenty of room for growth, but it's clear the Fever are at a crossroads, where their next steps will decide if this moment of success was just a fleeting achievement or the start of something much more substantial. So, while fans and players can celebrate the playoff berth, the bigger task remains, finding a way to truly compete, to capture the energy and excitement they've lost, and to prove that they're more than just a team that clinched a spot in a season defined by what wasn't. The Fever are in, but what comes next could define them for years to come.